Welcome back to another episode of I Am Maria podcast, a space where we explore the impact stories that inspire us to be who we are today, showing how our personal decisions and tools shapes our lives. Some stories began with a dream. Some began with survival. Today's stories begin on a boat. In 1979, Michelle Doan escaped Vietnam with her family as a young refugee in search of freedom and the change to build a new life. What followed was a journey filled with uncertainty, resilience, and the courage to start over. Years later, after struggling with severe cystic acne, Michelle found a beauty company not because she dreamed of becoming an entrepreneur, but because she wanted it to solve a problem she personally lived with it every day. This conversation is not going to be only about immigration or building a new life after changing the one you had. But it's about identity, about discovering who you are beyond your career, about protecting your peace while building a meaningful life, and about learning that sometimes our greatest obstacles are not around us, but within us. Michelle's stories remind us that success is not only measured by what we build, but by who we become along the way. Welcome, and Michelle, again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor to be on I Am Maria podcast and chatting with you.
The honor is mine, Michelle, and of course, I already got to know you just a little bit for us to be sitting here and for having the opportunity to hear about your story and most importantly, about who you are. And that is the first question that is going to start letting us know the person who we're sitting here today. And that is, who is Michelle Doan?
Wow. Well, we're going to start with the big questions first. So I think for the longest time, learning English when I was 10, with my story and everything else, I spent a lot of the time felt like I wasn't good enough. So I was constantly hiding or kind of like minimizing. And there are times in my life when people said I was too much or too intense or too this or too that. But with aging and with through maturity and with life experiences, I am now very comfortable. Like at 56, I'm very comfortable standing in my own power. And I think it's so incredible to share with other people because I think most of us as women, especially when we come to a new country, especially when we are going through a lot of hardship, there's a lot of uncertainty in the language and the talk between in our thoughts are so much more powerful. It's only when I was learning and to be aware of these thoughts that I start to curate them. So who I am today is I can't really quite encapsulate in one sentence, but I can tell you that my only mission is to make every day worth living and live in fulfillment. Am I successful every day? No. But that's when you start having a purpose, when you start having a mission, then you can build on that because like working out is a strengthening skill.
Totally. And somehow I relate to what you just said, and I'm like, I can't wait to hear more. And life is made out of decisions. important decisions that lead us to the life that we have today and the person we are today. And I want to ask you about one, two, three important decisions that made you the woman you are today.
Yeah. So I guess that the first question for me was the decision of taking a leap, right? Uh, the decision kind of goes back to getting a divorce from my first husband. I got married when I was really young. My sons were 2 and 5 when I left my first husband. I started my company in 1998, but it actually was started in 97 when things were very, very difficult. And trying to go through a divorce and trying to go through starting a company was extremely difficult. And it's a critical decision that have really changed my life because honestly, when you start making really important decision, you are super scared. But yet having the courage is going to change your life. And that's where it comes down to. And for me at that time, it wasn't an option for me to stay in the relationship. It was not really an option for me to start a company because it was part of my survival. So that was the decision with the first decision. The second decision has to do when you start building a business is how much you want to grow. And there are risks in growing a company because every entrepreneur knows that growth could kill the company just as faster than you build it, right? And so that was really important is to make the leap. And I've made many, many mistakes in my company, but you only can sharpen your skills when you start making these mistakes and learn how to avoid them and learning from your mistakes and moving forward. And the third decision didn't come until later on in life, probably just the past 5 years, understanding that all these goals that we have, whether it's a house, whether it's monetary, whether it's financial, I think those are really great goals to have. But at the end of the day, I was asking the decision of like, what am I doing it for? Because I find myself when I'm building these goals and reaching them felt a little empty, and it was not as what you think it would be. It didn't bring you the joy and the happiness. And this happens during COVID, where I watched my company basically sales drop 60% because Imani, we made a lot of makeup and foundations for women with acne, sensitive, and hormonal skin. And during COVID, no one wore makeup. And so seeing your company drop 60%, I was absolutely miserable. Then I was really sitting there and I thought to myself, why am I so miserable? Why is my identity tied to the company? Obviously, because, you see your income have shrunk. And the more that I push, the more miserable I became. And then I took a step back and I look at my life. I'm so blessed to live in a house that I love, to live in a city that I love, to have the family that I love. And yet I was unhappy. Then I had to make a decision. And back then I didn't know a decision to really explore what happiness actually meant to me. And what I realized, the difference between happiness and joy is that happiness is fleeting. You can be happy in one moment and be unhappy the next moment. Excuse me. Based upon the circumstances that happen in your day. So you can you can wake up happy and then something happens with your work, with your life, with your family, and then your happiness level drops. But being joyful, and it's actually a state, and it's a within. So for many years, I was looking for joy, quote unquote, And what I realized was that joy is not outside of us. Joy is actually inside of us. And what we have done through our conditioning of life is that we put so much conditions. In order for me to be joyful, I have to be XYZ. And sometimes it feels so strange. The concept of us that we are not worthy. And I'm like, of course I'm worthy. Okay, subconsciously, I felt like I was not worthy. But consciously, I felt that I'm worthy. I'm like, of course, it's kind of absurd to think that I don't feel worthy. So that helps me to really explore what is it about me that felt unworthy, right? So if you're listening to this, you're like, oh my gosh, what is she talking about? And a friend of mine brought this up to me. I was not very good at receiving compliments. So when people give me a compliment, I deflect, right? Or I one day I was telling her, I was like, oh, stop it. And she's like, no, you stop it and you listen to what I have to say. And I realized that when someone's giving you a real, honest, authentic compliment and you brush it away, you actually take that um, gift away from them because they genuinely want to share how you feel. So you basically are diminishing how they feel about you, and you are depriving yourself of receiving of that joy. And so that was about 2 years ago. And then I'm like, what is it that I can't receive a genuine compliment with genuine acceptance? Then after a while, I really learned as women, we are taught to give. We are taught to give to our family. We are taught to give to our husbands, partners. We are taught to give to our children. And then when we start giving to ourselves, I think we are deemed as being selfish. And then we are being judged for that. So as women, we are taught to give, but then we are not taught to how properly receive. And then I start to work on receiving. And as in the beginning, it felt so uncomfortable. When someone give you a compliment or someone give you a gift or someone lend a hand, someone offer to give you. And I learned to accept that. And I just take a breath and step back. And I said, okay. In my mind, I said, I receive.
I personally want to know more about this because it's something that I work every day. It's so beautiful to hear all the journey you have had, Michelle. And what I'm thinking right now is, what's your toolbox?
Oh,
How is that you have done it?
yeah. I think it starts with a mission, right? And I learned it from somebody. So we were sitting in a class, and I was listening to my friend's dad, and he was a very, very successful businessman, right? Every company has a mission, but I think most of us don't have a mission for our life. We don't have, we don't know why we're actually here. We know that we want to be this and this and that. And then he said to me, which completely changed my life, was your mission is the 17 words that is going to go on your tombstone. And I was going, what? That's really interesting. And guess what? Entrepreneur, that's entrepreneur, fully optimized business. It's not going to be on my tombstone. So I'm like, okay, what would be on my tombstone? It would be like being the best daughter, being the best mom, being a good sister, being a great friend, being a good wife, and it has nothing to do with what I have and what my company does. And it became so simple to me that I'm like, okay, that is like really interesting. And it all boils down to relationships. How much are we tuning in and paying attention to the people that are mostly important to us? Yes, I think having a professional career, having a successful company really helps. But I felt like the first 20 years of my business and work and professional, I was driving so hard, I was grinding so hard that I kind of missed my kids growing up. Then I start beating myself for it. I'm like, oh, my body was there, but my mind wasn't, and I wasn't tuned in. And I'm like, well, what about now? It's not too late. They're still here. And so I started improving conversation with my kids and start, asking out to lunch, asking out to dinner, asking my daughter, let's go shopping, let's have conversation. I want to hear more about you. Because as a parent, we tend to like talk to them or we preach to them or we correct them because we feel like that's our job. And from this standpoint is I ask questions to better understand. So my first thing, my toolbox is improving the relationships that are most important to me, which is my family. All right, that's our first toolbox. How do I get there? How do we create more awareness about our life? And I call it, I work on the Zen garden, but the Zen garden is between my ears, right? And so study have shown that we have same thoughts every day, and it could be anywhere from 60 to 80,000 different thoughts because, our back of our mind is running. It's like a computer is running. But 80% of those thoughts are repeated thoughts, right? And so this is why that it causes for us to worry about things that we have no control over. And that's the first thing I worked on is I was so worried. I was so worried about things that I had no control over. I was worried about politics. I was worrying about my kids, about what they're going to do. And I have no control over that. And understanding and embracing that worry is the most useless emotion. And as a mother, as a business owner, you worry all the time. If you start to think about how often that we sit and we worry about things, that's first awareness. I'm like, okay, when these things come up, my toolbox is like, all right, I am aware of these thoughts, but I have no control over them. And I let it pass. Because when you start digging into a thought and you keep thinking about it, what you focus on, right, is where all your energy flows. So the way I look at it is that I shift my energy and I'm not worrying about a 1 to 3 year plan. Those are reserved for days that I'm actually focusing on my business and strategy. What I focus on is, okay, what can I create today? Whether in my business, whether in moments, whether in thoughts and creation in my business. And that's what I do. And if you're not a business owner, what I started was that I started looking for the love in my day. Even going to the grocery store, I just smile looking at strangers, and it's so weird. Being living in Southern California, I go to the store and I see people and I say hi, I say good morning. They're all very shocked. And it's because we live in silos. And I'm not saying it for them. And they're shocked, they don't say anything back or they look at me. I don't say, oh, I stopped doing it. I just smile and I walk away. Because for me, is that I look for love everywhere I go. I look for kindness. And your brain is so magical. Whatever you focus on, you're going to find. So if you worry, if you focus on problems, you focus on issues, you're focusing on anxiety, that's what you get. And it's not easy. Every day, it's like going to work out, going to yoga. It's not going to be easy the first week, month, 3 months, or 6 months. But after you practice it enough, you'll get it down and you'll get better at it.
Totally. I love that. Michelle, let's go back, maybe not to the beginning, but for what I understand, it starts a new life for you. I want to ask you, when you think back on that little girl who left your country by boat.
Yeah.
What
Mhm.
what do you think she taught you about the courage that is still guides your life today?
I think, you know, a quick brief history. The fall of Saigon was 1979, 75. My mom was about to give birth to my brother. It was April 30th, 1975 is when everything came down. And it was a very hostile area time to really live. Now, Vietnam is a beautiful place to visit. We go back every year, and I absolutely love Vietnam. But during those times, it was very different. And I think from a 9-year-old standpoint, you're born into a lot of the calamities. You were born into the economy changes. In a sense, what means is that my mom was a very successful businesswoman. And we had, I would say we were like the upper class in Vietnam. When we left, she left Vietnam on a little boat uh, with 6 children. Like I was 9, my oldest brother was 16, and my youngest sister was 2. So imagine when you travel with 2 kids on a plane. So imagine you're traveling to an unknown destination on a boat with 300 people on a little 30-meter shipping vessel and nothing with the clothes on your back with 6 kids. So, and then my strength comes from her. And we end up in the refugee camp and she applied for asylum. And it was difficult because we pretty much left without provision and you have to survive. So that survival instinct was really hitting me very fast, right? And you learn by watching. And I learned from that strength. I learned from that negotiation, how to negotiate and how to support others. And my story is not unique. There are probably hundreds of thousands of both Vietnamese refugees from 70s to the 80s and in search of a better life. And I think, and it was such a dichotomy because we were in Thailand at a refugee camp. And I remember sitting in our little shack looking out at this beautiful ocean, emerald green water, white sandy beaches that you can see. But if you look backwards, is all of us live in poverty and trying to change. And all I know was that we were here because this is temporary and it was a transition. We were lucky enough to be sponsored and we ended up going to Canada. And it was an absolute shock because we grew up in a very tropical, very hot, very humid to Canada in the, kind of like the spring and winter was very dry, tons of snow, and we didn't speak the language. So when we arrived back in 1980 in the little town that we grew up in, it's called Burlington, Ontario, we didn't speak English. Now, Maria, we didn't even have clothes, proper clothes. And our neighbors, imagine you're sitting in front and you're playing with your brothers and sisters on their front yard, and cars would drive by. And I don't think they've seen Asian people before. They would stop and they would stare and they would see us in our pajamas, because that's all we were, because these cotton was made for really hot, humid weather. The kindness of people is not what I forget. We would come out and there would be tons of clothes in front of our house. And we were just so excited to receive these clothes. And then going to school, there was no official ESL program, which is English as a second language. They had to bus us to a special class so we can actually learn how to speak English. And so the journey from that 9-year-old is that I learned to survive. And thank God I was really little, not in having to worry about everything because my mother took care of us. It's learning how to adapt, how learn to survive, and learning how to thrive, regardless of your situation.
I'm just trying to picture everything you just said, because I personally have heard this on a movie. I've read this on a book, but I have never had the opportunity. And I said the opportunity because it is a real story. You're here. I really love that you said that you were looking at beautiful view while looking and living a different life, but knowing that that was just a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the courage that your mom had makes me think, what is one lesson that your mother taught you that continues to shape your life after this experience?
Yeah. It's resilience. Resilience, because no matter what happened, and life is going to come at you. My life is not better, and my life is not less of challenges now. But what it is that no matter what comes my way, I have that confidence knowing that I can handle this, right? And having that belief, having that faith in yourself is so powerful. And for the longest time, Maria, I didn't have that confidence. I just had a lot of grit. I'm just like, I'm gonna make this happen. I just had a lot of grit. But through time, you learn, right? You learn everything, whether you have a regular job, whether you have a small business, you learn how to deal and you learn how to flow. And every day I think, what can I do just slightly better today? I believe in Kaizen, which is like just a, a little bit better, like 1%. How can I make 1% better today, right? And that's what changes. Is also 1% better is also focusing on positive solution.
How can I be better today? How can I do better today? How can I be happy? And many things in life comes from challenges, right? Um, what has been one of your hardest personal challenge that people don't often see?
One of the toughest challenge. I think surviving two narcissists that I was married to. I was repeating a pattern, right? So I think uh, the I was too young. I didn't know what a narcissist was, right? And there was this thing where there's this old saying that was in my mind that you should marry someone who loves you more than you love them, or something like that, or you're just being greatly pursued, right? And surviving both of my divorces, right? I was questioning God. I was like, God, I'm a good person. Why are you doing this to me? And I realized I was doing it to myself because of these decisions that I was making. And so now from that, I made different decisions because I recognize that pattern. So I always encourage people to review, what patterns are you repeating that are not serving you? So when I find a pattern that I am repeating, I write down what I want to change. I recognize this pattern that I was choosing to allow narcissists in my life, right? I love my children. So I'm like, that's my payoff. I love my kids from, those two marriages, because I have two boys from the first one and I have a beautiful daughter from my second one. And I'm like, you know what? That makes it worthwhile, because I look at my children. I'm like, okay, that's a lesson I learned. So from there on, I started choosing differently. And I said, I'm going to choose someone who is kind, who is supportive of me, who is not threatened by my power. Because some men are so threatened by us. If you have strong opinions, if you have, if you're asking them to level up, if you're asking for things that you want in life, or to how they show up in the relationship, they are threatened by that. And so I was asking for someone who's kind and loving. And I started to look for that. I started looking for kind and loving people in my life. And I'm in a beautiful relationship in the last 8.5 years, but I also won't get married again. And I told him from day one, I'm like, I'm not the girl that you marry. And he's really surprised. He's like, he thinks all women want to get married. I'm like, no, no. I said, no, I'm looking for a life partner, but I don't want to be married to you because I like the option to leave whenever I want to. Because when you're not leveling up, when it's not working, I want to make it as easy as possible. And I know it's kind of hard. And I tell my girlfriends that, and she used to say to me, and she wants to get married so bad. And she was in her 40s. And I'm like, why do you want to get remarried so badly? And she said, oh, Michelle, I don't want to die alone. I'm like, guess what, girlfriend? We're all dying alone. They're not going to die with us. So let's just have a good time while we're here. And that's what I learned. Every obstacle, every person that you are having challenges with, the question you should ask yourself, what is the lesson? And when I do that, then I focus on a solution. It's like, oh, this is a lesson for me to learn. And thank you, God. I don't need to relearn it again because I will make different decisions.
And I think that helps when you see that challenge or that season as a season, you're grateful. But there's also a version of yourself that you have to let go, right?
Yes.
What was there a version of yourself that you had to let go in order to become Michelle today, the one you are?
Ooh, that's a really deep version. Yeah, the version that I had to let go was that my persona, that I was strong and that I can do, that I don't need help. So the new version of me that I had to let go was that I'm still strong, but it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to receive help. It's okay to be open for others to give to me because I always identify myself as someone who carry the burden and doing all of that and that I can make this happen, right? But then now I'm just like, okay, is this my responsibility to carry? And that has to come to with family dynamics too. Is this my burden? Because as women, we tend to take up responsibilities that are not ours. And sometimes I almost feel like every time I feel the urge to take up something, I'm like, Michelle, stay in your lane. So you can still be strong, but you can allow others to help you. You can allow others to give to you. You can allow to receive with grace. Then you allow yourself rest because rest can be productive. Because a lot of the time we're so tired and we feel guilty for resting. How crazy is that? If I'm tired, I'll take a nap with no guilt.
And I think as you keep going, many of the times you have to make a choice or recognize the difference between fear and intuition.
Yeah.
How do you recognize that difference between fear and intuition when you're making these important decisions?
Fear screams in your ear and you can feel it in your entire body. And fear is there for one reason, right? As a human, is a very strong emotion. We fear things that we don't know. We fear things that we're unfamiliar with, right? So this is why it's really hard for us to break old patterns. So it in new patterns and adopting something new is uncomfortable, and we are fear of the unknown. Intuition is super quiet. Intuition is that little whisper that if you don't quiet your mind, you will miss it. Intuition is a little feeling in the pit of your stomach. And I know that everyone experiences every time that you went against your intuition, that little tiny, tiny voice, it has proven you wrong most of the time. Because you're like, oh my God, I knew that was going to happen. But we didn't follow because we justify it with our mind. We justify why it would work. We justify, why this is good for us. When we know deep down inside, in our heart and in our stomach, everyone feel it differently. I feel it everything in my stomach.
And I love that you mentioned fear is good. It's okay. We're humans. Intuition, you feel it and you have to be present and give a space. But also you mentioned our beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Our beliefs are there. The way we grew up, you mentioned that you had to let go a few things because they were patterns, right? And we all have patterns and generations and so on. Is there a belief you once held that you no longer believe today?
Um, wow, that's an interesting question. One of the beliefs that I think about a lot is that God didn't love me because of all the hardship I went through, that I did not feel the presence of God in my life, right? And you get a degree of many variants of people when they talk about Christianity and all of these different things and what their belief in God. But I feel like I had to find that path on my own. Um, I go to church with my partner Jake, right? And I see people in receiving mode. And I'm like, wow, they're just like so blissful and so happy. So I would put my hands out and I was like receiving, but I was like, I don't really feel anything. So it's not so much as the action, it's about having those conversations. And it goes back to God, like, do you not love me? Do you not care for me? Why are you putting these obstacles in front of me? Then I change my perspective because I feel that whether life, whether God, whatever you believe in, I, on my journey, life journey, I'm supposed to learn those lessons. We are here for a purpose. And all the things that we're experiencing is what we needed to learn. And so when I start shifting focus and say, thank you so much for those lessons, that's the belief that I felt is the strongest for me. Is turning these obstacles into opportunities for a better life.
And really working on that on your life because it's really easy to tell a friend, but look, take a look at what you learn about the situation and make an opportunity from there. But when we're going through hard moments in our life, it's hard. Now, I love that you said making peace with God, being grateful, because when we look back, it's different. And I want to ask you, looking back on your entire journey, which you're still on, what are you most grateful happened exactly the way it did?
Oh, I love this. Okay, so it all started because people ask me, how do you get into this business, right? And from 15 to 27, I had horrible cystic acne. So I was like, oh, why does everyone have beautiful skin and I don't? I felt like my skin was cursed. I was really frustrated with that. So from 15 to 27, I go to dermatologists and I do all this thing and through like extreme frustration. And back in the 80s and early 90s, there were very little information about like acne and sensitive skin and what you can use and et cetera, et cetera. And then one day, right, I one day I go and to a salon and there's an esthetician. She looked at my skin and she's like, you know what, I can help you. And I'm going, no, no, you can't. I'm like, I go to the dermatologist. They can't help me. And she said, you listen to what I'm telling you, you will change the way that your skin looks. And she was offering acne facials. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna go in. And anyone who ever have a cystic acne facial, cystic acne is really deep inflammation where it's in your skin and it's puffy and it's tender. And it's not like blackheads or whiteheads. We're talking about like infections that are happening under your skin, inflammation. So when you have a cystic acne facial, she literally take a little lancet that she break your skin and then she extract, right? And then I would wear a neosporin on my face for days because some of those areas will become infected. But guess what? For about 2 to 3 weeks, my skin looked amazing. So I go back to her, okay, you're making a believer out of me. And and I said, but the result is not long lasting. And she said, well, because I don't know what you put on your face. I brought in everything. And then she pulls out a book that is and I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? She's like, oh, it is a list of ingredients that cause your skin to break out. And this is in 1997. I'm like, what? There is a list? Like, company knows these ingredients break out their sensitive skin customer. And then I took that list and I went shopping and I couldn't find anything. And I was so pissed and frustrated. And I'm like, hey, how come you have these ingredients in your products? And it says hypoallergenic and I'm still breaking out. And then from frustration, information, and just my hard-headedness and stubbornness, I'm like, this can't be the way. This can't be the way. And that's the start of my company, Imani, because I was in fashion. And Maria, I can tell you, no matter how great your hair or your outfit look, if you have acne, you can't hide it because it's on your face. And I felt so unconfident. I felt like an ugly duckling. And so for me, it was out of like a pain point, and I'm like, oh, I was inspired. No, I was in pain. It was a really deep pain point that I wanted to resolve. And that's what we did. And we started making products without any of these junk ingredients. We were clean before clean was a trend. We were vegan before vegan was a trend. And then as I age, you know, my skin started to change. Like when when I was pregnant with Ava, I had pregnancy hormone. Like then I started breaking out. Then I went to perimenopause and then I broke out again. Then I went to menopause. Then my skin started to hang and droop and all that. Then I had to find a solution. So the company grows based upon what I need. And I selfishly do it for myself because I'm like, I'm not alone. There are women that are frustrated. And now it's even worse because there are so many cheap products that could be good on Amazon, could be on TikTok and things like that. But is it the right product for you? And so that's what we do at Imani is that we really think about what who do we develop products for? And we check out all of the junk ingredients. So if you ever like buy a skincare and you put it on and it smells so good, most likely it has fragrances. And if you have normal skin and you don't care, that's fine for you. But if you have sensitive, you have hormonal, you have like reactive, you have cystic acne, you want to avoid products that without fragrances. So that's really changed my life. And like these little decisions that you make. And the way I look at it, you know how we're talking about joy and about receiving, but I also think about serving. Who am I serving? And I want to be able to create a product where real women with real hormonal issues, with real aging concerns can come and know that I've tried and I've tested. It's not because I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to create products that really work. and in a most simplest way.
That really work because they work on you and you are the first testimony, which is it's amazing. And hearing about this, I'm like, I understand after taking a look at the book, you're like, I need to find a solution. But was that really the point where you realized that your biggest struggle and your identity was so much bigger and really was becoming life purpose?
No, it did really become my life's purpose. It was just something that I strongly believed in. I'm like, this is insane that this is insane. This doesn't even make sense. And I love Gandhi's quote, be the change that you want to see in the world, right? And I know that he's not talking about skincare. Okay, let's get real. I know he's not talking about skincare, but I wanted to do something that is really different. I didn't know it was my life purpose because every entrepreneur that started a company, I didn't even know if I was going to make it through the first year. I didn't even know I was going to make it through, the first 5 years. And they said that most business fail in the first 3 years. Well, we've been doing it for 28 years, and we're available in like 17 different countries. And you know, it's because it works, and it's because it's easy to understand, and because I'm a nerd. And so like our skincare, like if you're going to go to Sephora and try to buy skincare, you want to look at the 3 Ps in skincare. First is potency, the percentages of active ingredients in the skincare that you're buying. Second is penetration, is the delivery system, right? So we use like 13 different patents to reduce the ingredients to small, simplest. So you want to know that it goes into your skin, it's going to help, right? And the third, it has been proven, right? And those are the things that you should ask any skincare that when you're looking for the right product for you. And then look at the ingredients. And that's how you find the product instead of buying a whole bunch of junk products that does nothing for you. And it takes time to work. Like anything else, it's not going to change your skin in a week. It's like working out. You need to wait for your cycle for your skin to really change. And the older we get, it goes from 30 days to 60 days. Like, you know.
Nice. I want to jump back to the Zen garden, to how you
Yeah.
call it, because being a businesswoman, changing countries, your personality, divorce, your life, your kids, everything, right? It's life. But you mentioned that you like to protect your Zen garden. What does
Mhm.
that mean? And how can
Oh.
people being creating that kind of inner peace in their busy mind and demanding lives? How does that work?
Okay. So every negative thoughts, every worry, I categorize them as a weed in my mind. Okay. So when you start having the awareness of the quality of your thoughts, so if you're spending most of the day worrying, then think of your mind as a backyard with lots of weeds and it's been unattended to, right? It's growing wild. You got stuff growing back there you don't even know. And sometimes you want to go in because and explore it. And how do you know you don't want to go in is that you're using distraction, whether social media, whether something else. You're using distraction not to really explore the quality of your thoughts or your mind. So that's the first thing that I looked at is what am I thinking? So every time I worry, I think of it as a we. And so what I basically go in is like I'm going to start curating what type of thoughts I'm going to allow myself to have. And so you have to be actively think about what you're doing. And as soon as I'm like, okay, today I'm only going to focus on certain positive thoughts. And then, but if issues come my way, if I'm triggered or if I'm angered, I imagine that's just a little weed popping up in my head. And I'm like, okay, I recognize that. I'm going to I imagine take that wheat out and then just take it out of my mind. And everything that comes up, I just take another one. You could be picking wheat all day or say, you know what, I choose not to think about that one. I want to choose on positive, things. And then that's step one is having that awareness. You'll get to a point where it was really important for me to have that peace. And it's almost, how we talk about meditation, and they said, how about it's like emptiness, like it's impossible for a busy mind to be empty. So that type of meditation doesn't work for me. So I listen to Louise Hay, and she's on YouTube, and she's free. How you start your morning is how you start your day, and how you start your day is how you start your week, and the weeks roll into months and roll into years. And YouTube is free. So I go into YouTube and I listen, and then it pops up. And then when you start listening to her, then it'll give you all these suggestions. But I have a morning routine where I wake up slowly. I only grab my phone to turn on Louise Hay and see what she has for the day. I don't open up my emails. I don't do any of that. I get up early where I'm having time for myself. And then I do lymphatic massage because that's going to help to wake up my body in a way while I'm listening to really wonderful positive thoughts. And I'm like, great, I'm going to go out and I'm going to make something beautiful today. I don't know what it is. It could be a beautiful meal. It could be a beautiful coffee. It's not big, it's small. It could be like cleaning a shelf in your house or cleaning a corner. It gives you something positive to work on and focus on.
Totally. And we often think that needs to be big things, but not really. It can be small acts that then it just adds up. Michelle, you had to start over more
Mhm.
than once. We said it, right? New country,
Yeah.
business, you as a person. What advice would you give someone who feels afraid of beginning again?
Ooh, okay. That is the most scariest thing when either you've lost everything, when you're about to lose things that you deem really important. Those situations make you feel stuck, right? Sometimes certain things in life make you feel stuck and make you feel trapped. And I recognize those moments. So every time I feel stuck and I feel trapped, I tell my mind to flow. And for me, I imagine it's like, okay, you know what? I recognize this moment of stuckness and feeling trapped. I'm going to break myself by flowing. And whatever flow means to you. For me, flow is like being on a river and just watching, imagining that I am the river and I'm flowing. Or it could be floating in a pool or looking at the ocean and the motion, right? Guess what? Everything in this life, Maria, is temporary. And sometimes we only feel stuck because it's our mindset and it's because that we forgot that we have the freedom to choose. And then start with a mental of just flowing. So think about of a flowing river, close your eyes when you feel stuck and think of something beautiful. And then you take 3 or 10 deep breaths. And then you're like, okay, let's flow and let's figure out where we're going to end up. And that exercise works for me a lot.
I'm gonna tell you later why I feel so connected in a way. We're so alike in so many things. But one of the things is the reflection of the river. Usually, when I feel stuck, here in Georgia, we have rivers. So I go to the river and I take a look at how it's flowing. And I remember that every day it flows differently. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, but it's always flowing. And it gives me that peace of mind that whatever it's happening,
Mhm.
if I feel stuck, I'm not stuck. I'm flowing. I'm just flowing differently depending on the day.
Mhm.
I love it so much.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave you guys with one quote that I left from Bruce Lee. He said, "Be like water." That's, if you look it up, be like water is when you're absolutely fluid.
Can be very deep, that quote. So, Michelle, I know we are getting right on time, and it's a shame because I want to keep speaking to you, and we'll continue to do so. But I want to ask you this one last question before we go, and is what would you like people listening to take away from this episode?
Look for the love in your day.
Well, that is short and deep again. Michelle, thank you for sharing your story with such honesty and grace. Your journey remind us, or at least it reminds me, that resilience isn't it simply surviving difficult moments, but it is allowing those moments to transform us. You escaped your country searching for freedom. You built a company by solving your own pain. And today, you're helping others understand that our greatest success isn't found in titles or achievements, but in learning how to cultivate peace in ourselves with that Zen garden that I love so much now. I love something that you shared today, and is that Zen garden that we need to protect our own, because life will always bring us challenge, thoughts, difficulties, but when we learn to care from what's happening inside us, we become capable of facing anything happening around us. So thank you again for reminding us that starting over isn't the end of our story. Sometimes it's where our greatest purpose begins.
Amen.
And for you listening to this episode, please go and subscribe, share, and make a comment, because that way we can get to more stories just like the one from today with Michelle. Thank you for being here. I'll see you on the next one.